Helen Everingham travels regional Australia teaching practical life skills through her course, The Centre Within. Helen is a wonderful motivator, inspiring speaker and mentor to hundreds of people. Helen, your journey with The Centre Within actually started back in the early 80s, so tell me how that came to be.
Yes, it did. My marriage was falling apart. My two little boys were 4 and 6. And my brother was living in Brisbane, I was living in Sydney in those days, and realising that I was just not coping. He flew me up to Brisbane to do The Centre Within by Bert Weir at the Relaxation Centre of Queensland. And just sitting and listening to Bert for 2 days, it made me realise, I got to sort of Sunday afternoon and thought, life is not that tricky. We really do complicate it. And I said to Bert, "This is wonderful, I'd love to do more, do you ever come to Sydney?" And he said, "No, but I'd like to." So that was the start of my organising Bert to come to Sydney to do The Centre Within. We did that for about 12 or 13 years. So that, of course, I was absorbing all of the information when I was listening to Bert deliver the course. So that's how I kind of learnt it, that's how I took it all on board. And I really lived it and worked with it for all those years.
So then those two beautiful little boys that you read almost all on your own, the unimaginable happened in 2002, and they were taken from you in a plane crash in the Philippines.
They were.
So tell me how you worked through that terrible grief.
Oh, if you say that to any parent that my two boys died, they were 24 and 26 when they died, and you get a lot of sucking in of air with people, because what people are thinking is, how would I cope with that? And as parents, of course, the worst thing that can happen is that something happens to your children.
It's the biggest fear.
It is. And it was, as you can imagine, devastating. I felt, if this can understand this, I actually felt really grateful that I had been given a lot of tools and techniques to work with. Yes, you go through the grief. I think the worst thing for me was the anger. I had raised those boys on my own pretty well. Their father wasn't around a lot. And I was really ticked off with the universe. I had worked so hard, and I'd learnt so much from the courses that I'd done with Bert and had raised them, and they were fine, upstanding, responsible young men, and how dare the universe take them? So I had bouts of anger where I screamed, and I have a very loud voice. I screamed for hours, but I got it out. And what I had learnt from Bert was that when you have anger, you must get it out. But of course, you need to get it out at an appropriate time. So there were 3 major opportunities where I just screamed and screamed and screamed. And there was that acceptance of what is, and I think that came from having done all the work with Bert and having to listen to The Centre Within, which of course is full of wonderful tools and techniques. And I felt very grateful that the way the universe, I talk about the universe all the time, that I'd been given those tools and techniques, so it helped me enormously. It didn't make it any less sad. I still cried and cried. And I had days where I was depressed. I couldn't get out of bed for 3 or 4 days at a time, but in the back of my mind, I knew why I was depressed. So that feeling of, okay, I will work through this and I will get through it. I had a few bouts of that, but I can only imagine what clinical depression is like, which means you can't get out of bed for like 2 weeks. When you know why you're depressed, then if there is a reason, then there is that feeling, okay, I'll work through this. And I did, even though I had a few bouts of depression. And I had some down days, or at least down times, I worked through that, and I think that's important in a grieving process, to allow the grieving process to you've got to work with it and roll with it And that's what I've learnt over the years, that if you need to wallow, you wallow.
Yeah. So does the sadness still creep into your life now after all these years?
Yeah. Sometimes I can be standing in the queue at the post office and some young man laughs.
Yeah.
The same way the boys laughed.
Yeah.
And the tears just roll down.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You just let it happen and then you're fine. But it comes up all the time. And that's okay. That's just part of what is. You learn to live with it.
Yeah. And Helen, within sort of the 12 months after they died, Bert had encouraged you to take on teaching the course yourself. So did that help you? Was that a step in that healing process for you?
Absolutely.
Being able to go out and help other people.
Yes.
Taking the focus maybe off yourself and moving that to others.
And I consider it's like my therapy.
Yeah.
When Bert was coming to Sydney and he was running the courses in Sydney, he said to me, one day you're going to run this course. I went, am I? And that, of course, was the trigger. And I just said to Bert, time that and he was then 78. He actually retired at 80. And it has been my way, the best way that you can kind of lift yourself up is to lift other people up.
Yeah.
So that's, in that way, it's therapeutic. So if I can help other people and pass on the tools and techniques that I've learned over the years, then that helps me. And every course, every workshop I do, I say to people, I get more out of this by delivering this workshop than you do listening to it. I know you don't understand that, but I really do.
Yeah. Oh, I get that. Yeah. And it must have been really comforting for Bert to know that that his life's work was going to continue with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Helen, how important is attitude to life? Like a good attitude.
Oh,
and
it's everything.
How do you turn a negative attitude into a positive attitude?
The very first thing I would do is to be grateful. And I go over the top grateful. Because we don't realise what a wonderful country we live in. We know that we have problems, that's just life. We're going to have all sorts of things thrown at us, but we live an amazing life. So to be grateful from the very basics. Sometimes I work with people that have depression, and if we can start with a blank sheet of paper and I get them to write a list. Number one, what are you grateful for? Some people don't even know where to start. So you start with the absolute basics. I'm grateful I've got 2 eyes and I can see, as basic as that. And we do live in a wonderful society. The more grateful you are, it's one of the the best way to turn negative into positive. It's the first thing that I suggest that people do.
In self-esteem, that has quite a bit to do with your attitude, doesn't it?
Does. Yeah. Self-esteem is the single most important thing in achieving anything in life, because if you don't think well about yourself and you don't love yourself, you will stop yourself from getting what you really want because you don't think you're worth it. So that is certainly part of the whole process. And often we don't realise that we stop ourselves from doing things, we shoot ourselves in the foot by the way that we speak. And we tend to put ourselves down and we talk about the things that we don't want rather than what we do want. Or we say things like, that'd be right, it always happens to me. Oh, no, that'd never work. As soon as we say that, we don't realise the power of the word. And when you've done workshops with me, what do I say? That you become what you think about. So whatever you think and whatever you say, actually you attract. It's very important, and that is a wonderful thing in changing your attitude and building up your self-esteem and your confidence in yourself. So words are vital, very important.
Helen, we all have our own beliefs, don't we? And I have this belief that in no matter the darkest hour, there is always some humour to be found. Am I right?
Absolutely.
And how important is humour and laughter?
Laughing every day is absolutely vital. One of the things that I talk about when I'm running workshops is the work of William Glasser. William Glasser has reality therapy, and he talks about those basic things we need for survival, and we know that's, water and food and shelter and all that sort of thing. We need to have a belonging to family, or something greater than ourselves. We need to have autonomy and control of our own space. We need to have purpose in life. And the fifth thing is to laugh. That it's one of the paths to mental strength. And if you are not laughing every day, then find some way to laugh. Go and play with kids. Kids, even in their darkest hour, kids know how to laugh. Find ways to laugh, because it builds your endorphins and enkephalins. It's so good for you, particularly when we are under pressure, when we're finding the stress of things very difficult. Laughter, it just gives you that physical boost, but it's also therapeutic. It truly is really important.
What about contentment? How does that work in with happiness?
Well, happiness is one of those things. I always think that people talk about the pursuit of happiness like you chase it around and you hunt it down. You know, happiness comes and happiness goes. Contentment comes and contentment goes. There is that's just the way life is. We are thrown all sorts of things in life that we need to deal with and learn from and move on from, all of that. There are flashes of happiness, which is wonderful. It would be dead boring if we were happy the whole time. And that contentment, which is and again, I think comes back to good self-esteem, because that's a quiet okayness. When you know that you are happy with yourself, you can deal with whatever life throws at you, and it's going to throw you things. That's just what happens. Nobody gets through this life unscathed. But realise this whole thing about happiness is just ridiculous. We're not going to be happy all the time. But when we have those moments where we are and we feel contented and we feel at peace, make the most of them. And that's very much about, also one of those important things is living in the present, because we're very safe in the present. Everything's fine right now. And all we have is a series of right nows. And if we worry about what's gone or what's coming up, you know, put your time and energy into things over which you have control, rather than worrying about the things that are either inevitable or the things over which you don't have control.
And Helen, what would you consider is the most important lesson that you teach people through your workshops?
Well, that's a big one. I guess it comes back to attitude. Attitude is the most important thing. Whatever else you might have, whatever else you might do, whatever else you might achieve, if you have a good, positive attitude, you can actually deal with anything. And I think that's been my greatest lesson. Yes, I think attitude is absolutely everything. It's the thing that you actually do have control over. Because no matter what happens, you can always change your attitude. You can change the way that you look at things. Even though there are things in your life that might be out of control. How you see things and how you approach things, how you talk to people, how you deal with things, very much comes back to your attitude.
Helen, thank you. If you're interested at all in learning more from this beautiful woman and all her knowledge, please, you're on the internet, aren't you?
I am.
Through the Centre Within. So just get on to Mr. Google and he will lead you in the direction of Helen. Thank you so much,
That's
Helen.
a
I really
pleasure.
appreciate you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching our video. I hope you enjoyed it, and please try to remember to just click on the subscribe button so we can keep you updated with everything that's happening. Thank you.